So the Diddy trial is already almost done. Closing arguments are supposed to be tomorrow. And yet we're still getting some surprises. Some of you have probably already heard that the prosecution has dropped a few charges. And just to be clear, though, he's still facing some serious federal charges. The charges that they dropped were more, I guess, state specific. They included kidnapping, the arson charge, and some of the S trafficking charges. And when you look at the document with the kidnapping and the arson in particular, they dealt with New York and California laws. So there that is. And I believe the kidnapping involved the Capricorn Clark testimony, and the arson charge obviously dealt with the Kid Cudi testimony. So it's my understanding that this may have happened, I don't know, maybe for a variety of reasons, but what I read from at least the prosecution side, they really just want to streamline the jury instructions and not cause too much confusion. And quite frankly, they want to avoid a hung jury. So they don't want too much back and forth with the jury when it comes to these particular charges. And who knows, maybe they just felt like they didn't really prove those charges. We don't know. Now, I have heard other commentators say that they may have dropped these charges, particularly since they're state specific, because perhaps these states will in fact bring charges against Diddy. I don't personally see that happening because, in particular, the arson charge or the arson incident, I mean, that happened back in 2011. And I have no idea how Capricorn Clark would prove or how a state would prove in court the kidnapping charges. So I'm not quite sure on that, but who knows the evidence that they may, in fact, have. But that's what one commentator felt, and another commentator also stated that maybe they want all the charges to be purely federal because ultimately maybe there's some back end deal happening and maybe he's trying to get a pardon. That seems a little far out there. I believe more the first reason, which is they're just trying to really streamline the jury instructions and make it very clear to them what Diddy's being charged for, and they're wanting to avoid a possible hung jury. Because this will be a difficult case, I'm sure, for the jury to deliberate on, but they are expected to start deliberations possibly on Friday. As stated in my previous post, and it's all over the news, Diddy's defense did not call any witnesses, and their case that they presented was only 30 minutes. They just presented some text messages from Cassie, apparently her stating how she enjoyed their relationship, and also stating how she's going to act more like an adult. Now, some people took that part of her statement almost like, you know, if she's, well, we saw that she was an abused woman, so she may have just kind of been fawning her abuser just to make him feel good and feel better so that perhaps he does not abuse her later. Now, some people interpreted those text messages that way. However, there could be jurors who will interpret her text messages as she was happy in this relationship, therefore she was not as trafficked. We shall see. The other evidence that the defense presented involved Diddy's former assistant, Mia, that's her pseudonym, and also some of the Capricorn Clark testimony and some of the Bana testimony. They tried to point out some inconsistencies, how they didn't mention certain things when they first interviewed with the attorney or the U.S. attorneys. So, you know, that's in some ways kind of cherry picking. You know, they're just trying to find some kind of reasonable doubt. But hey, it could work. That's their job. They're there to find something that they could plant into the juror's mind of reasonable doubt. So we shall see what will happen. Again, closing arguments will be tomorrow. And Diddy, he did speak yesterday during the trial. He thanked the judge for having him. He pretty much made it clear he was not going to testify. And, he just put on his Diddy charm, I guess, if you will. But we'll see if it works for the jury. We'll see if he will be found guilty or not guilty. Until next time, I'm Stacey Brewer, and this has been H Blues Word. Peace.